Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum
Doobie doobie da da da. Doobie doobie da da da. Doobie doobie da da da. Doobie doobie da da. Doobie doobie da da. Doobie doobie da da. Ba-da-da, 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 ba-ba-ba. Doopy-doopy-da-da-da. You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. In this episode, we're plunging once again into Gotham City, chatting with the hottest comic book couple, and we do mean physically, Tom King and Mitch Gerads, and celebrating the mighty return of Batman, the Brave and the Bold, to DC Comics.
Yeah, Batman the Brave and the Bold issue 1 is out today. Not only does it have a new story from Tom King and Mitch Gerads called The Winning Card, it has 3 more stories. One by Ed Brisson and Jeff Spokes called Stormwatch Down with Kings. Another one by Christopher Cantwell and Javier Rodriguez called Superman Order of the Black Lamp. And one written and illustrated by Dan Mora called Heroes of Tomorrow. Hopefully you've already read this issue like Lisa and I have, and you loved it as much as we did. I freaking love an anthology comic.
I was actually thinking about this as I was formulating my thoughts of what do I want to talk about in our intro and outro, because I love anthology comics. I love Tales from the Crypt, where there's this overall kind of genre vibe.
Yeah.
But this is not exactly that.
No, this one is... Because, traditionally, Batman the Brave and the Bold is it's Batman and he's partnered up with Green Arrow and they're going to go fight this person. Mm-hmm. Or it's Batman and he's partnered up with Sergeant Rock and they're going to go fight this person. That's not really what's happening in Batman the Brave and the Bold #1. We have a year 1 story from Tom and Mitch. We then have a Stormwatch story, a Superman story, and then a future Batman story from Dan Mora. And really what they are doing is they're exploring the notion of heroism within the DC Comics aesthetic and how that heroism can only thrive through partnership. No person can do it alone, which is a theme of this conversation regarding Batman, because again, this is a year 1 story. So this is about a man trying to do it alone. And I'm guessing over the course of the next couple of chapters, we're going to see that Batman can't just do it by himself. Also, these stories tonally are very different.
Right, yes.
So it's also celebrating the kinds of heroism stories that you can tell in the DC universe.
Right, so that is what I get. I get almost like a smorgasbord kind of feeling from this anthology. And it's not just about the partnerships of superhero partnerships, but it's about the different type of relations of writer and artist within the greater DC universe, which I think is a wonderful thing to celebrate because it is getting more diverse every day.
Which is why it's also incredibly exciting to have both Tom King and Mitch Gerads on the show today to talk about their collaboration and to get their own perspectives on what a Batman story should be, because they are aligned, but they're also not perfectly aligned.
Yes.
And that tension is really exciting.
I think their slight misalignment comes across in this conversation, but I also think it comes across on the page, which I think is what makes their partnership feel so true, feel so dimensional.
One of the delights of this conversation is the discovery that some of the ideas that you think would be Tom's are actually Mitch's, and some of the ideas you would think that are Mitch's are Tom's.
Which, of course, exposes our biases as readers, where we think we're so smart, I'm seeing the Matrix, but really we don't know what's going on creatively, intimately between these two dudes making a comic about Batman. Also, awkward segue, I feel like I need to disclose something to our listener, because I feel like in this episode, I'm squidgy about it coming out, because I feel like I am on my very worst behavior in this episode.
No, you're great. You're great in this conversation.
So, right before we turned the microphones on, I was like, I think I'm coming down with a migraine. And then throughout this conversation, and actually through next week's conversation.
Spoilers, this is a 2-part episode. So you're about to hear the conversation with Mitch and Tom about Batman the Brave and the Bold. And then on Thursday, we're going to drop a sequel episode with Tom King talking about Danger Street, which just had its 6th issue.
But what you're going to hear over these 2 interviews is me slowly spiraling down into migraine territory, and that sometimes it tears down a layer of like what it takes a filter off.
Right. I've listened to the interviews already. I don't think anyone could tell that you had a migraine.
Okay, good.
While listening to them.
But they could tell I was being a little rude.
Well, we start talking about your philosophy of Batman, which is a conversation that you've been having in your own head for the last several weeks, and you've been developing some feelings about Batman and the mythology around Batman, and maybe you're a little more honest with that conversation than you would have been if you weren't having a migraine. But I think we all benefit to that filter coming down, Lisa. And it's not like you offended Mitch or Tom over the course of this conversation either. And I don't think you'll offend any Batman lover out there, which you are I am a
Batman lover. And like in this conversation, you toss off offhand, Lisa hates Batman. And I do not. I know you were joking, but sometimes there are shades of meaning. Like what I think is so interesting about the Batman conversation right now is that Gotham has been Gotham for so long, and Batman has been Batman so long, and I feel like...
And many of us have been reading Batman stories for so long, watching Batman movies for so long. In my case, 30 years. In your case, what, almost 20 years?
So, like, to me, like, you look at a bad situation, and you see an individual going, like, I have the solution, and then you watch the solution not really work for decades.
Yeah, but that not really working is at the heart of the winning card story that Mitch and Tom are telling. And it's an adaptation of sorts of the first Batman issue. Mm-hmm. And I love that so much. Like, they deconstruct what Bill Finger and Bob Kane were exploring back when that issue dropped, and now layering on a 2023 perspective, right?
Right. Well, a lot of my philosophy on Batman was formed while reading Cliff Chiang's Catwoman.
Yeah,
recently.
Lonely City.
That's right. And that conversation started inside me, and now I cannot not see that narrative in every Batman comic that I read. But I'm not one of these people who thinks that Batman is a fascist, like, or thinks that, like...
But he's a little bit of a fascist.
He's a little bit of a fascist.
Like all superheroes.
Yeah, but like, to me, I go, Batman is a scared, flawed boy who has overcommitted to a terrible idea.
All right, don't give too much away of what we're going to talk about with Tom and Mitch.
But that's, okay, that's the groundwork. That's just my long-winded way of saying, I'm sorry.
No,
But also...
I think this would have come up whether you had a migraine or not.
But you would have been
a little
tactful.
more subtle, maybe a little more tactful, and you're less so in the conversation. But again, I think that brings an energy to the chat that's exciting, and I think people are going to really enjoy here.
But I love Bruce Wayne, I love Batman, and I love Batman stories. And you can also tell in this conversation, I love having this conversation. I will never tire of this conversation.
And I love the Joker. I love the Joker, and I love any comic that introduces a version of the Joker that's not quite like any previous Joker. Mm-hmm. This is a very unique, a very scary Joker. I think I used the word scary like 700 times over this interview.
Right.
And I adore it. I adore it. And Tom King brought a really interesting Joker into his Batman run. You can actually go back and listen to our episode, link in the show notes, discussing the Best Man storyline, where the Joker's just hanging around, waiting in some dude's apartment, waiting for an invitation. That Joker, I think, was a leveling up of the concept of the insanity behind the Joker. And I think this Joker is another leveling up of the concept.
I think, like, Joker is a little bit of an ink blot test.
A Rorschach test, maybe?
Perhaps. Where, like, we try to overlay intentionality over what the Joker does because we cannot grapple with the senseless.
Yeah.
Like, the senseless is so terrifying to us that we have to throw a reason over it. And I think that this new approach to the Joker deepens that conversation.
Absolutely. So before we get into the chat officially, again, go to the links in the show notes. There's the link to our conversation about the best man. One of the very first episodes that Lisa and I ever released in this feed was an in-depth conversation between the two of us about Mr. Miracle, one of our all-time favorite
I love those episodes.
books. There's a link in the show notes to that. There's also a link in the show notes to our episode discussing the Gabriel Walta Tom King episode, comic book The Vision, another cherished book for comic book couples counseling. And Tom King has been on the podcast before discussing Love Everlasting. He did that chat with Elsa Chartier, and that's one of our favorite creator conversations as well.
It's one of the ones where the artist is drawing the entire time, so you can hear her little scritchety scratch. She gets some free ASMR.
I edited a lot of that out.
Never mind.
Lisa.
I got the scritchety scratch. You guys got nothing.
But Love Everlasting, if you're a Batman Brave and the Bold fan and you're not reading Love Everlasting, you're missing out on one of the best comics of the year.
It's so good.
Just like this issue.
I love it so hard.
And you should probably also read Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler issue that Mitch Gerads and Tom King did, because that's very much in conversation with the winning card also.
Oh man, if you have not read these comics yet, you have such a treat ahead of you.
Yeah.
What good books?
Final warning, this is a full spoilers conversation about Batman the Brave and the Bold. Well, not the whole first issue. We spoil everything in the first chapter of the winning card. So if you have not read it, it's going to be spoiled for you. So please go and read it. It's great. We love it.
Here's my super loose, off the dome plot synopsis. The winning card opens with all of Gotham City PD at this one rich guy's house because the Joker has threatened to murder this guy and steal his diamond. And Gordon is like, oh man, this is like such a waste of resources. Meanwhile, Batman, it's his first year. He's spending a lot of time beating up this guy who has already murdered his wife. And then also, the Joker has kidnapped this child from a park and is kind of taking her on a little promenade. He gives her a balloon. They walk around the park for a little bit.
They hang out in a house. They do hide and seek.
And now here's the ending of everything. Mr. Claridge dies anyway with a huge smile on his face. And it turns out the diamond has already been stolen. And then the Joker returns the daughter, Helen, to her dad and then murders the dad. So the entire time the dad is worrying about the safety of his daughter, while his daughter was probably the safest individual in all of Gotham.
And while Batman was beating on this dude at the train yard, Brute Nelson, the gangster, was at a Bruce Wayne party wanting to get some FaceTime. This is a heinous gangster. He thinks he can take advantage of Bruce Wayne. He's sorely mistaken. But yeah, Brute Nelson, back in canon.
That's right. If you don't remember who he is, give him a goog.
Batman, #1. You should also read that. Bill Finger, Bob Kane. Wow. Okay. All right. You did a great job, Lisa.
Thanks. I'm pretty proud, actually.
Let's just jump into this conversation with Tom and Mitch now. Lisa, we've did it. We've got the hottest couple in comics in the Love Nest. Tom King and Mitch Gerads. How are you?
Good.
Doing well. Doing real well. Wait. I need clarification on hottest. Do you mean?
I mean most attractive physically.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, that's the one I was hoping for.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
The word hottest has layers like an onion, or
Yeah.
like Shrek.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure, like Shrek. That makes sense to me.
We're dropping this episode on the day that Brave and the Bold #1 came out. We have read the issue. We have reread the issue. We have reread the issue again. It is such a uncomfortable comic.
Yeah, like,
it is
it's
a delight.
It's like a little
uncomfortable comic. It's so
a nice
scary.
dance or a poem.
Like the vibe on this book is different than what we've experienced before from both of you. I think it is a much like scary. I just keep saying scary. It's a much scarier comic.
Yeah, I think one of the things that started this whole thing is Tom and I talking about how comics have never scared us. Like it we can be scared by movies and audio and things that have ways to build that tension, but when you're reading a comic, you're in control of everything. So it's really tough. And so we were like, oh, can we set out to tell a story that would actually scare someone? And what better way to do it than with the Joker?
We literally, Mitch had some friends in the what would you call the horror podcast genre, like some people who are very successful at that. And we literally sat down and had a dinner with them, and we're like, what works and what doesn't work, like what scares people, and we're deconstructing it in terms of trying to build this comic before we started.
So what did they tell you? So what were some of their hot tips?
I mean, nothing was revelational. Yeah, that's a new word. I just invented it. Revelational.
I like it.
It's big. It's scary.
You're a
One of the things I
wordsmith.
said. I'm a wordsmith. I'm a wordsmithy. It's number 2. I mean, it was like, obviously, like what the deal was is you're manipulating the imagination of your reader more than manipulating their eyes or ears or senses. So it's like a lot about what you don't show as opposed to what you show.
Mm-hmm.
And how that sort of it can create discordance that leads to fear.
What really struck me about this first issue is, for me, Joker accomplished a magic trick. He created this enormous distraction that, he got all of the cops in one place. He still managed to get the jewel, murder the Mr. Claridge, and also do this other crime at the same time. I think about like how the police and Batman try to create this sense of ubiquity. We're everywhere, and because we are everywhere, we can keep you safe. And here the Joker goes like, you are not in fact everywhere, and here is how I can prove that.
I mean, the story is built on Batman #1.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way I would put it is we're sort of sampling Batman #1 the way you would do in sort of modern music.
Yeah, Brute Nelson, he's back.
Yeah, Brute Nelson. And I think what makes that comic spectacular and one of the few like genuinely like great reads. I mean, there's lots of stuff in the Golden Age that you admire, but some of it's just very aged. But that Batman #1, it still reads really well. Is that like comics up to that point? We're obviously comics were being pitched to kids. They're really a medium for 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, very disposable medium. And just like you said, the sort of magic trick here was like, Robinson and Kane and Finger introduced this character that was not a child's character, that was a serial killer, that was an absolute horror, that pulled off this magic trick. Most comics up to then, you read Shazam, a guy comes up with the plan, Shazam breaks up the plan, and it sort of goes away. I guess it was called Captain Marvel back then. But like in this, the guy comes up with a plan and actually gets away with it, and the people freaking die at the end. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I feel like that set off like an atom bomb that we're still kind of feeling the retributions all these years later.
Before we started recording, Brad was going like, this is like a horror comic. This is like a horror version of Batman. And like, I guess it is horror in the theme of like slasher. Like this is like a Scream, you know what I mean? Like they're doing a Scream kind of idea.
But it doesn't necessarily match your rules of what a horror comic is.
For me, horror means like there is a supernatural element.
Which I object to.
Which he objects to. But I do think like...
Wait, so you mean like a movie like Halloween is not horror?
It is horror because there is a supernatural element, which is why Michael Myers persists, right?
But not in the first one. In the first one, he's just a crazy guy who broke out of a...
Yeah, that's true.
But then he disappears at the end, right?
He
gets shot up a bunch of times by Loomis.
But I think that Batman is competing with something that is a supernatural element, and that is his limitation. So like within the DC universe, he is the individual who is faking it.
He's fabricating the supernatural element. He wants people to think that he's a supernatural creature.
And I think the same with the Joker in this context.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I would say the Joker is supernatural, not the fact that he has superpowers or he comes from magic or ghosts or something.
I'm saying that he is trying to appear supernatural, as Batman does, trying to appear supernatural, like in the context of like larger than life.
Yes, I think in the context, yeah. This first book was supposed to set up that these are two forces of nature, that they're beyond, our sort of human understanding. Like that any normal villain, Batman's going to kick their ass. Any normal human, Joker's going to kill them. And so this is when they meet. And in that sense, they're like two mythical figures meeting. So they're kind of supernatural in that way. And I think of Joker as being supernatural just in terms of writing fiction, because unlike any other character in fiction, any other character I've ever written or even read about, he doesn't have motivations. Like every character is, every time you write anything, the third act of the villain explains to you why he did what he did. The Joker never has to make that speech. He never has to, because the Joker just does anything because he's freaking evil and he doesn't really care about it. He's not motivated. It's not like, I'm sad because my mom died or I have this origin story or this origin story. He's just like, I want to kill people. Or sometimes I don't want to kill people. He's complete random. He's chaos, the opposite of Batman. So in that way, I feel he's supernatural.
And I love that you brought up that comparison to like Michael Myers or all those things, because that's exactly how I view the Joker. He's a man, but is he? It's this nebulous world of if the Joker is just a person who's gone crazy or if it's something else. And I like to perpetuate that the way I draw him with the inexplicable white eyes, like the old Adventures of Batman animated series.
Yes. There's a moment in Wayne Manor where Bruce finally gets some FaceTime with Brute Nelson. And
new star stage.
Speaking of Brute Nelson, years ago, I was hounded by this one Twitter account that was a Brute Nelson fan page. And they better be getting this comic because they kept going on about, we need Brute Nelson back. Well,
Bitch, that was a dream. There's no way there was a Brute Nelson.
I think he's still on there. I looked him up.
I guarantee you the Brute Nelson fan accounts will come out of the woodwork when this issue drops. But there's like this brilliant moment where Bruce Wayne is talking to Brute and he says like, well, let's just say I was out looking for demons. And when Bruce turns to Brute, the panel is suddenly like Bruce Wayne has Batman's eyes. So like to me, that is kind of like a metaphorical, but also like a supernatural moment in the comic. I loved that bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's you guys are hitting the nail on the head with all this as to how I was approaching all that. The eyes thing, I feel like it was Chris Somney or Tom Riley. They posted a Batman fan art and it was Bruce Wayne, but like the shadows cutting across and it was the eyes. And I was like, oh, that is so beautiful. And so when I was reading that script and there's that moment where Tom wrote something like, he turns to Brute like suddenly with a face like Batman. I just took that literally. And I think it's a really cool moment.
Yeah, to me, it speaks directly to that writing the line of what is Batman? Is he, a guy with no superpowers, or is there something to him,
Also at the center of this story is this idea of irony. We have the moment with Helen where the Joker tells this joke about this individual who doesn't understand the definition of irony. And then we have this moment of dramatic irony where this child says something that is so wise and will inform, I assume, the rest of this arc. But then I think that irony is something really dangerous to bring up in a Batman story, because for me, once you start pointing out small irony, the big irony everywhere is obvious. And to me, the ultimate irony of Batman is that he actually isn't making Gotham any safer.
Yeah, I mean that's why the story starts out with it's a Joker story, and then the side story, the Batman sort of subplot is him chasing down this criminal who did something bad. And he's brutal to this guy. This is pre-Robin. This is, before anyone lightened up Batman. And I wanted exactly that to be that sort of irony that is he kind of he's his own little monster in this scene. Like he's the guy's bleeding there, his leg is broken, he's crawling, and Batman's not even helping him at all, not even talking to him, just watching him and playing with him in the same way like a serial killer might play with his victim, except he's our good guy. So yeah, that idea is runs throughout it. This sort of the irony that this is our hero, that he's our hero, and where you could shift the camera and see him as the villain.
And doing a year one story, it automatically puts this different filter on it than you would get anywhere else. Can you talk about why this had to be a year one story?
I mean, it was Few things I very much wanted to do. I've had a lot of original ideas. I hope, God willing. And I was like, this is a very unoriginal idea. A great chef can make incredibly intricate meals, or they can just make something that's utterly simple and hopefully perfect. And I was like, I wanted to do that. I wanted to do like, this is not, I'm not giving you huge twists or deconstructions or that kind of stuff. I'm making you just like steak, with a side of potatoes, but I'm going to do it in as intricate and as pretty and with the best artists in comics as I can, and see if I can just nail that. So like, so that was the idea. I was like, I'm going to do an origin of Joker and Batman meeting for the first time. That's been done. That's Batman 1. That's The Dark Knight. Brubaker did it. Obviously, Bob Kane did it. It's been done 15 times. I was like, I want to do my version of that. A lot of people have made steak, but I'm going to make the best steak I can.
Yeah, it's like the 3-ingredient meal, which is in the spirit of the original Batman Year One graphic novel.
Very farm to table. It's very simple in there. I'm
hungry.
So that was part of it. The other part of it was sort of what I said before is I think the Batman that evolves, the Batman I wrote in Batcat is the Batman that's sort of been affected by his family, a guy who is, the first comic I ever read was A Lonely Place of Dying by Marv Wolfman, and like that's all about like after Jason died and what it means for Batman to have a Robin, have a not Robin, and I wanted to write a story about a more brutal, bestial Batman, a more crazy Batman. Batman doesn't quite understand who he is and what he can do. And because that's the one I wanted to take on the Joker, because I think that chemistry of the two of them, of just a guy who thinks he is omnipotent because he can punch anyone as hard as he can, meeting someone he cannot defeat. Interesting.
Which is really evident in issue 2 when they first actually clash together.
Okay, yeah, I'm itching for that to happen, but
me too.
Like the first time we like really get to see Joker in this issue, when Helen and him are having the conversation, talking about like withholding and not showing, this idea of using these silent film title cards to communicate his language, like that was like the first slap of the comic for me.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, this is new. This is something I have never seen before.
Yeah, the title card thing wasn't originally in the script, but like it just felt right. Sometimes you're working on these comics and you get this idea and it just and so like I'm very cinematic when I approach a story and how I view it, and I just love the idea of, if this was a movie or an animated thing, there's chaos and action, and then all of a sudden it just stops to like weird piano music, and then you read that and there's like a scratchy record player sound, and then back to the chaos. It just feels so very Joker, and just a way to make this Joker different than all the other Jokers that have come before and come now. And you see a little bit at the end how I'm going to play with that in the rest of the series, where they kind of break the fourth wall a little bit. And so like at the end of issue 1, the film starting to melt, and scratches start coming in with the ha-ha-has, and so it's been real fun to play up with that kind of fourth wall element that you don't usually get to play with in comics.
Mitch and I have been experimenting with this sort of as a comic book technique of putting words in these black panels and sort of what it does. I mean, we've been doing that for like 7 years now with Darkseid is and the pow pows and all that. So I was thinking about this, and I remember as a kid, I was always obsessed with in DKR. Frank does those panels that are like basically talking head panels, like news people talking, but he doesn't give them word balloons. He gives them captions,
right?
Without boxes, just like kind of, or no, like underneath the pictures, kind of. And I always found that to be so much more effective than somehow it made it like haunting. It looked like the characters were frozen, but I was still reading their words. Like you lose the movement of the comic book all of a sudden, and instead it's that spooky thing of like if you pause a TV and you still hear the voice coming at you, it's like creates kind of a discordance. So I wanted to experiment with that as kind of a way to make Joker, the fact that you would see him and then in a panel later you would get his dialogue. It would just me sort of copying and trying to build in what Frank did.
Well, it inserts this like kind of stillness that is very creepy.
A stillness, but also like to me, like it cosmically elevates the idea of the Joker.
It's kind of a timeless move.
And suddenly the Joker I'm hearing in this comic is not the Joker that I've heard in every other comic. Like, I think when I read Joker stories, I do hear Mark Hamill because I was raised on Batman
Absolutely,
the Animated
yeah.
Series.
Yeah,
But suddenly, like, I was not hearing Mark Hamill in this book. Like, I was hearing something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, something with like some serious reverb to it or something.
To me, it reminds me, like, the scariest thing about the Joker is not the Joker, it's the idea of Joker. And the scariest thing about Batman is not Batman, it's the idea of Batman. And they're both trying to like manipulate this idea. And this, in this year one comic, this is an area where Joker is greatly outpacing Batman.
Yes. Yeah, Joker's like 3 steps ahead of Batman. And that's again right from, I mean, we're going right back to the Bob Kane, Bill Finger stuff. That's Joker's origin story. He started a few paces ahead of Batman, and Batman had to catch up. So that's sort of built into the comics. But yeah, I agree with you. But like, I hear Mark Hamill's voice too. And what makes that so genius is like Mark Hamill's so good, you kind of, it's hard to hate his Joker. I mean, he's such an awful person you always want to hate, but
Sure.
But there's something kind of just a little wonderful about him. There's something a little nice. I don't know, maybe because I'm too much Luke Skywalker, like you can never separate yourself from it. But and this Joker, there's nothing about him to like. He's not, which makes him, I mean, awesome, because that's you like Mike Myers, even though there's nothing about him to like. It's that appeal, it's the negative appeal.
That idea of like not liking this version of the Joker, when we have the scene with him and Helen and the balloon, you're like, oh, this is an interesting pairing. This works. But then when we get to the end of the issue and Joker kills the dad right in front of Helen, like it's like this is not fun. Like,
and it's literally just for his own entertainment. The murder of the dad in the doorway, in the context of Greater Gotham, is not something that's going to be really like, oh, let's get the entire
unless it does
GCPD. We'll see.
And that's, I mean, that's an obvious callback to the first serial killer movie, M, which from 1930, whatever, it's a German movie.
Peter Lorre. With
Peter Lorre as the super bad guy. And he's killing children, and the famous image is they obviously can't show the child die, so they show the balloon float off into the air. So that was sort of my callback to like the first serial killer and Joker, the ultimate serial killer, kind of merging visually.
The other fun thing about having a year one story, though, is it's also the time when Batman is selling himself to Gotham, and then the Joker is also kind of doing the same thing, where they have to sell themselves as concepts to the city, but also to the reader.
Yeah. And there's something magical too about a Gotham where the citizens aren't used to all this chicanery. Now there's a guy dressing up as a bat running around, and now like the news reports are coming in and there's a scary clown on the streets. Like it's all new to them, which I think is terrifying to think of, like, because it brings us back to our world a little bit, I think, where all of a sudden, like, if you saw that on the news, you'd be like, oh, woo.
Yeah, that's been super fun. And this is like everyone thinking the Joker is just something they can handle. Gordon being like, okay, the cops will handle this. And then, Gordon's boss being like, we cannot handle it. And then Batman, and then just realizing, no, this is something you've never seen before. This is something completely, utterly unique and bizarre. And them coming to that realization, what that means sort of for them as characters and like almost existentially, what does it mean that the devil is out there,
Yeah, and again, the joy of that, the dramatic irony of that is like, we know what's coming for Gordon. Like Gordon's life is going to change.
Yes.
And we also know it's coming for Brute, presumably, and it's going to be the exact same freaking thing he just did. Like, how I distracted you? I created this distraction and did exactly what I wanted within it. I'm going to do that again.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is that Hitchcock moment where you're seeing the bomb being put under the chair and everybody knows it's just going to go off over and over again. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like, it's the first step of that.
How do you know when it's time for a Tom and Mitch story?
When Mitch is done drawing.
How do you know what is a Tom and Mitch story?
What do you think, Mitch?
That's a good question, though, because like,
used to be because there's some sad sack dude at the middle who won't love his family. I guess gone away from that a little bit.
But I think every story we've done has been born out of us being next to each other and just rambling on about what excites us or what we haven't done yet, or even what like bugs us in comics and how we can affect that. But it's usually just this kind of wonderful kismet that happens where we're just talking and all of a sudden like one of us has the light bulb pop up above their head and then we just elaborate on that.
I mean, we talk about sort of where we want to go, both professionally and creatively, and both are equally important. What mountains you want to conquer, or whatever that is, and also editorially, what to let us do. And for this, I mean, we had just done the sort of Riddler one, and that's 48 pages, which is about to be put in a beautiful hardcover we just got.
64.
64. Sorry. Ripped you off.
I remember.
So I mean, I think we greedily said if we could do a 4-issue sort of Batman evil dark story to match that issue, that we could put that in one trade and have sort of the Riddler Joker, Dark Mitch saga, which we think would look just beautiful. That was part of the calculation of being like, we really felt we hit something with the Riddler book. We just, both of us loved that. And we wanted something to complement it to make sure it could, because sometimes you write a 64-page story and it can kind of get lost eventually. You do like a Fantastic Annual, just because they aren't collected that way. They're not. So we wanted to put something out that could be collected forever and stand on its own. So this was sort of to complement that.
Lisa and I were wondering if the Riddler One Bad Day story and this were in conversation, because they do feel like they belong together. And then, of course, it inevitably makes us wonder, is there a third chapter after the winning card?
Yes. After this, we're doing Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yes.
Sad Tweedle story you've ever seen.
Oh, you jest, but I would read that.
We don't know what's next, right? I'm trying to talk Mitch into some things. He's trying to talk me into some things. So
this is the first time where we both have separate ideas and we're trying to figure it out.
Yes. But I'm gonna win. So that'll or he might win. I can't do anything without him. All I can do is put words in paper. He can do lots without me. He can make a comic without me. I can't make a comic without him. I don't think it's fair. It really is like cheating.
So is that how the winning card really comes to be? Like you wanted something, like is it that kind of like, I don't know, cold or logical, where we need something to pair with the Riddler story? Let's think about what that would be. Or are you already marinating on a Joker story and then that just fits with?
I don't think it's cold. I think it's hot. They take their two brains, they rub them together, they make a comic baby.
Hottest couple in
that
comics.
we all get to hold and tell you how beautiful it is.
I mean, there's bigger context to it all. Like, I think I'm getting up to having written the most Batman comics of anyone alive. It's like me and Chuck Dixon. But when I did Riddler, I felt like I was writing an entirely new Batman. I was doing a much more grounded. I wrote a very superhero Batman. I love my Batman run, but it was very superhero-y. They're big concepts and people traveling from the future, and all the stuff that Chip even took to another level now, where he's falling off the moon. And when I did Riddler, I was like, oh, this is like the grounded Batman. This is like this. This is a 1970s detective Batman, or like a manhunter Batman. And I was like, I hadn't written a lot of that one. I hadn't written a lot of just the dark, dirty detective. And I was like, this is the Batman I want to write about. This sort of, this is Mitch's description, so I'm gonna steal him. But it's a cryptid Batman, you call it, Mitch?
Yeah.
A cryptic? I'm gonna say it wrong.
Cryptid.
Cryptid, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The idea that he's sort of this incredible force that haunts Gotham City, but he's not a superhero. He's something else, Like I wanted to do something on that vein.
I'm obsessed with this notion of, well, first of all, because of the pandemic, I got super into horror podcasts of, creepy pastas and cryptids and all these things. And then I started thinking,
wait, did you say creepy pastas?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Tom needs to get into the world of creepy pastas.
Wait, they're creepy. Like, is this literally a pasta that comes to life? No, the lasagna! Ah! Is that what we're talking?
Tom, we're gonna have to talk.
Anyway. I'm sounding really stupid right now. Shut your mouth, Tom. You're too old to talk.
But Gotham City to me is this this supernatural place that's just full of creepy pastas and cryptids. Like it's all these unexplainable.
Wait, I'm not
People.
supposed to laugh when you say creepypastas. I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut. I'm just stuff. Creepypasta. Gotham City is a place of creepypastas. That's a sentence.
What's scary about Gotham is that there's no getting rid of the villain element, because the villain element is the foundation of Gotham. If you defeat the evil in Gotham, it will just sink into the ground.
Yeah.
So like every hero in Gotham is actually doing a system of checks and balances where you go, okay, I'm going to work with this bad guy on this thing to get to stop this thing from happening. And we're going to allow these corrupt cops to persist because that's the only way that, Commissioner Gordon can get his job done, where it's just like Gotham just seems to be this place where it's impossible for things to get better, which I think is, sometimes where we are as human beings, where it's just like, well, you know what?
We're stuck in Gotham.
We're stuck in Gotham.
Yeah.
We are in a dystopian present.
No, I mean, it's a very sort of Catholic, after the fall, we've left Eden kind of thing. Gotham City, it's sort of like the first sin has already happened and we can never sort of take that back, and we have to live with what we got and try to find redemption. Like that's very much the story of God. I mean, I wrote a book called Gotham Year One that was all about that. So yeah, that is very much what Batman is and what he's sort of confronting, and sort of these demons that have been released. But yeah, he can never, you can never uneat the apple. You live with the sins that are out there.
What you're discovering is that Lisa has been on a real long journey with Batman over the last few years of this podcast, where she started out like this extreme Batman fanatic. And somehow she has reached a point.
I love Batman.
No, you love Batman.
It's like I never get tired of talking about Batman.
But you are at a point where like your opinion of Batman is like he's wrong for Gotham.
Yeah, I really think that he made a mistake by becoming Batman. And it's like he can't really take it back now.
No take backs. You're Batman.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I have some sympathy with that. I mean, I've always felt that, like, my parents died, so I'm kind of sad about that, and the pearls and that kind of crying. As someone who's, my mother died, that's a very child's point of view of grief. Like that's like that when you lose your parents, you're kind of obsessed with that forever because you've lost something that can never be repaired. But being an adult is learning that grief can be repaired, hopefully. And so I always, it always seems a little child. That's why my final issue of Batman is him being like, yes, I'm not a child anymore. That I did feel that, but I have other things to live for now. I have a family to live for. I have Gotham to live for. So I do have sympathy to that sort of view of like, he comes from an odd place. It's not exactly pure and simple.
And the idea that thing of like, I can fix everything. If I assert myself hard enough, I, the individual, can make the world better.
It's very dude of him.
But what he's actually doing is creating a power vacuum where he cannot no longer Batman, because if he no longer Batman's, chaos, something terrible will take his place.
Yeah, I like Tom said, I tend to view these things as like, especially with Batman, as a very grounded element in how I view how this reacts in the rules of the real world to a point. But like, I do love the fact that Batman is just a man, and I like the idea that there's negatives that come with that as well. Like a lot of people's view of Batman is that he's infallible, and the whole thing of if he plans enough he can defeat anyone, blah blah. But like, we're all flawed. And to think that Batman isn't is like too childish of a view for me. And so I like the idea that, like you've been saying, he makes these choices and now he's living with it. Whereas maybe it wasn't the perfect choice, but it was the choice he made at the time. And that's the world. That's our story. That's how humans create story.
I'm gonna get all highfalutin because you're highfalutin people.
Yes, please.
But like, I remember when I was first reading like Star Trek when I was a young, stupid kid, and like this idea that he had that like once you get rid of sort of the concept that God does things for you, and then if you pray hard enough, it's like it reveals that the self does things for you, and that the power is not with the divine but with you, and you make decisions, and your own will can change the world instead of praying. You actually have to and the sort of the Camus idea, like if you accept that you can't get the rock up the hill, then you can live a happy life. To me, I do admire that sort of about Batman. I mean, that can lead to some weird Randian junk if you push it too far, but that to me makes it interesting that he's like, I'm going to make a choice to stop crime, and I know that's impossible, and I'm going to make every sacrifice in my life to achieve that decision. That to me creates sort of what Mitch said, a cryptic, a man unlike any other man who's showing what's possible with the will, and also if you think everything is possible with the will, what the consequences of that are.
I think though sometimes the revelation on the other side of like the fruits of my life are going to come out of my personal effort is the beauty of the world is going to come out of the collective effort of all of the people. If we can find a common ground on which, now I'm just creating Watchmen. The squid's got to come down, and once that squid comes down, everything's going to be freaking better. But I mean,
I think the pandemic taught us that that's not true.
That's true.
But I mean, like the greatest godliness is going to come out of a collective effort of humanity rather than the individual effort of one rich person. Like I think like the
that's why I said there's some Randy crap weirdness. Yeah. I mean, I think, but I mean, the tension in Batman and the tension in all superhero comics is like the difference between individual freedom and to fascism, right? Like,
right.
Like the idea that the sort of one man knows better than other people how it can be organized, and I think that's what makes Batman great is that he does. I mean, 1,000 people have played with this better than I have, but the idea that he does know there is that limitation, that he can't become a fascist, that he doesn't suddenly organize. I mean, because I'm one of the stupid people who think Batman could beat Galactus if he had enough planning time. I'm one of those idiots. And the idea that he could organize the superheroes, he could do the whole Mark Wade Tower of Babel thing and defeat them, and he does, and he restrains himself. And he's like, this is the best I can do within the confines. I think makes him interesting.
I find Batman extremely interesting. That's why I love Batman. And it is like the fallibility and the limitation and him trying to, especially in year one, try to hide his limitations, like he's trying to go like, hey, look, there's my symbol in the sky. I'm the hero. But in actuality, he is banged up, bruised, making mistakes, failing. Like one of the most fun ironies for me about Batman is Batman 66 is considered like the silly Batman, but he's a Batman with the best track record of heroism. You know what I mean? There's the least fallout from his decisions, and a lot of those decisions are just dancing, which I love.
Man, I just watched the Michael Keaton Batman's, the first two. He's killing people left and right in these movies. Oh my God. He gives some guy a bomb and pushes him into a building and watches him explode.
Yep. Amazing. Oh gosh. Well, we could talk Batman forever with you two. But we've only had one issue of Batman Brave and the Bold to get through yet. And there's so many more to go, and we're extremely excited.
3 more to go. It's so short. My God.
So many more to go. No, you guys are going to do at least 20.
5% more to go.
Yeah. 75%.
Percentage-wise, that's a
lot. My favorite thing when I was telling people about this book at conventions and stuff is Tom's like, all right, we're going to take that 8-page story from 1940 and retell it as 96 pages.
I call it the ultimate Bendis.
I'm glad you said it. Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We hope you will return in the future so we can talk more Batman or whatever else you got going on.
Absolutely.
Now I have to leave and go freak out about Trinity. So we'll see how
Yeah, good luck. We didn't even talk about Trinity. Look at us.
Specifically told not to.
Oh, don't talk about it.
I have thoughts though. I'm excited. I'm really excited.
There are some thoughts out there for sure.
Mine are positive.
Good luck managing all
At least
the
the internet is a good place.
Oh yes. You got to curate that garden. You got to mute and block as many people as possible. And on that note, let's get out of here and get online.
Thank you guys. You guys rock. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Our pleasure. See, Lisa, you were not that savage against Batman in that conversation.
Yeah, I know, but there is that one moment where Tom's like, I see a lot of myself in Batman, and I don't roll back anything that I said.
You're like, you're a bad person, Tom King. No, that's
that was
not what you
my
said.
point. He's a good person making bad decisions.
Well, we've talked about that a lot over the course of our many years doing comic book couples counseling, but the appeal of superhero stories is that they're exaggerated interpretations of our everyday lives.
Right.
And they show that failure is part of the journey. We become better people through our failings. Listen to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Actually, listen to Yoda in The Last Jedi. Yes, I love The Last Jedi. I'm just going to drop that bomb right here. Yoda is like, failure's your teacher. And we wholeheartedly believe in that. And when you read Batman, it is just a man failing and learning from his failings.
And he's also an individual who is trying to function within a broken system.
Yeah.
Where I feel like in this conversation, I was able to articulate, how I feel about Gotham, where it's a tractor that runs on, I don't know. I can't find the end of that metaphor. But, it exists because of the evil within it. It is now a machine built upon dysfunction. And if we take the criminal element out of Gotham, what will we have left? It won't be Gotham anymore.
Well, I'm really excited to see where Tom and Mitch go with this story, where they leave this version of Batman off. The joy of a year one tale is that he doesn't have his Bat family around.
Right.
As Tom and Mitch talked about in this conversation. And Brave and the Bold is all about partnership and succeeding through partnership. And Batman, where he is now in his continuity, he has this huge Bat family, multiple Robins, Batgirls, so many people that he could reach out to help him succeed in whatever his goal is of that moment.
Super friends.
But this Batman in the winning card has none of that.
Right.
And it is going to be a story, I'm guessing, of a Batman struggling to deal with that trauma in his chosen method and having to adapt some of that childish philosophy.
Yeah.
This childish fix of donning a cape and punching people in a train yard.
Yeah, it's like Helen says to the Joker, making mistakes is how we grow, right?
Yeah, but gosh, like this Joker, those silent film cards, his dialogue, when I read that, I just hear a Joker I've never heard before, and I find it so shiver-inducing. I read this on the iPad at night in bed.
Spooky.
And it was a real spooky comic. It's been a long time since I've had a comic that gave me the shivers the way that this one did, and it's all because of those silent film cards.
I'm really committed though to my Scream interpretation.
Yeah.
Where
it's a good one.
Where Joker is a non-supernatural individual
trying to appear supernatural.
Yes, he's doing a magic trick.
Which is a
like
reflection
Scream.
of what Batman is trying to do with his cape and cowl also.
That's right.
And which,
that's right.
Makes them great dark mirrors of each other. So, yeah, I hope you all really enjoyed this conversation with Tom King and Mitch Gerads. Like we said at the beginning, this is only a part 1. Come back Thursday for part 2. Tom King is here diving deep into Danger Street. The 6th issue just dropped. You should probably read all 6 issues. Highly recommend that you do so. And that conversation also goes into some interesting territories. Yes, we talk just a little bit about Wonder Woman. When we had both of these conversations, not only was Lisa having a migraine, it was the day that DC Comics announced Trinity, the daughter of Wonder Woman, and the internet kind of blew up a little bit.
Right.
And it was so funny watching Tom King's Twitter feed because he was responding to people right up until he hit record on this conversation with us. And then the moment he stopped talking to us about Danger Street, he went right back to Twitter. He's like a real reply guy. He's doing the James Gunn thing, answering everyone's questions, concerns, frustrations about Trinity. And,
And feeling really vulnerable about it.
Feeling really vulnerable, but also wanting to have that conversation and not run away from it, which is what I would have done, right? I wouldn't have addressed any of that stuff. I would have just said the story speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And the story does speak for itself. We can't talk about it, but Lisa and I have read Wonder Woman 800 and Wonder Woman #1. But
when we were having this conversation, we were super not allowed to ask about it. We were specifically requested not to talk about Wonder Woman at all.
Right. So we talk about it in vagaries.
Yeah, Tom brings it up.
Yeah, Tom brings it up.
We didn't bring it up.
But you're going to want to hear that conversation on Thursday. That's what I'm hyping up. You're going to want to hear that conversation about Danger Street, Wonder Woman, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Plus, Danger Street is such a weird, cool book.
Such a good comic. One of the best comics going on the stands right now.
It's having a great meta conversation about what comics can be and do.
We said this during our end of the year 2022 episode when we named Tom King our favorite writer of the year. But Tom King right now is on a streak.
Yeah.
You know, Danger Street, Gotham Year One, Brave and the Bold, Riddler One Bad Day, Love Everlasting.
It could be said that he is going for God-level ubiquity in the DC universe.
Yes.
What a perilous place to be.
So please be on the lookout for that episode. And our Invincible Full House conversation is going to happen. But again, Lisa had
I was so sick.
A migraine. And that wasn't the first migraine of the week that Lisa had.
Yeah.
So it kind of ruined our schedule.
Yeah, that migraine. Like that one migraine that started on Friday, went through Saturday, had a little bit on Sunday, still happening today on Monday. Migraines are the best.
Yeah. So Invincible Full House, our conversation, our counseling session on Mark and Eve is gearing up to be released, hopefully at the end of... or at the beginning of next week.
Yes,
so
yes.
Thursday, Danger Street, the week after, Invincible Full House, and then we'll have another Creator Corner conversation with Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum talking about the Dark Horse Comics series, Minor Threats. Big stuff happening at Comic Book Couples Counseling. We're super proud of it. We're super excited about it. Hit that subscribe button, friends.
Oh, have you not yet? You're missing out.
I'm guessing we picked up some new listeners with this Brave and the Bold conversation. So if you are new, hit that subscribe, go into our back catalog and see all the incredible episodes that we've done.
There is less gotcha journalism in those.
Yeah, that's what we did this week. Gotcha journalism.
Lois
Okay.
Lane would be proud.
Lisa, how do we get out of here?
I have no idea. Maybe with a segue? Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me on all social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Charm at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
That's so sweet. I am always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google, and Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
Yes, and we're reaching the end of our Sleepwalking Through Sandman series. We just covered Sandman 66, The Kindly Ones, Chapter 10.
Yes.
Just 3 more issues to cover the Kindly Ones, and then we're on to The Wake, the final arc of the original Sandman series. You are not going to want to miss out on that one. If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, where we have reviews of the new Superman Max Fleischer cartoons, the new Superman 4K box set, reviews of comics, our picks of the week. Please head on over to comicbookcouplescounseling.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at CBCC Podcast.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review of the show while you're there? We're fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy. Bum bum ba da bum bum ba da ba.
In 3, 2, 1. Lisa, we have the hottest couple in comics in the Love Nest today, Tom King and Mitch Gerads. How are you? I just brought that up, didn't I?
Wrong.
Yeah, I did. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again.
That'll make a great
But
stinger.
now they know. It will be the stinger. Now they know how the intro is. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Woo!